I never imagined that a single envelope and a kind smile would mark the end of 15 years of devotion. Colin Fraser's my name. I work as a senior driver with MapleHaul Logistics in Edmonton, Alberta, and I am 52 years old. I've been operating some of the province's heaviest rigs for 15 years, transporting cargo throughout Saskatchewan, British Columbia, and all points in between. I have experienced wildfires, floods, blizzards, and even a tornado warning once. Until today, I believed I had seen everything. Through the glass walls of the corridor outside Lucas Morin's office, I could hear the quiet hum of the operations floor. The workplace smell which you never fully get used to, but always stop noticing after a few years, was a faint combination of printer paper and burnt coffee on the wall across from me. I saw the iconic MapleHaul logo, 3 silver trucks slicing over a bright red maple leaf. There were 25 shiny rigs parked in the lot outside, but I recalled when that insignia was only a decal on 2 used trucks. From behind the reception desk, I could sense Lucas's assistant's eyes darting in my direction. With a faint, uncomfortable smile, she glanced back at her computer screen. She was aware, we were all aware. The air had been heavy with murmurs ever since Lucas, the new operations manager, arrived from Toronto 6 months ago, cost-cutting automation, restructuring and replacing legacy drivers with younger, less expensive hires. I had assured myself that I was safe, though. I wasn't just another name on a payroll, after all. The customers specifically asked for me. Lucas Morin stood there surrounded by the chrome and glass of his corner office as the door flung wide. His voice was smooth and well-practiced as he murmured, "Colin, come in." He gave me a quick, chilly handshake that withdrew before I could really grasp it. As I entered, I noticed the clean desk with just a laptop and, pointingly, a sealed envelope. The minimalist furnishings and the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out onto the yard. The difference was striking. Lucas's world consisted of spreadsheets, quarterly projections, and polished surfaces, while mine was composed of steel grease and road dust. Lucas started by saying, "Thanks for waiting," as he slid into his chair and folded his hands with the cautious poise that management schools most likely teach. "We're making some changes, and I wanted to personally update you on them." Even though my throat was already constricted, I nodded. I had witnessed enough friends called into such offices. Almost all of the words were the same. With a smooth transition, Lucas added, "We've been reviewing operational costs across all branches, and while your record is, well, it's impeccable, Colin." The rest I listened to, slowly: legacy expenses, simplifying in line with strategic objectives. Like a paper-wrapped razor, the envelope glided over the glass table. Transporting life-saving medical supplies via frozen mountain passes for 15 years. 15 years of bringing in Christmas cards from half of the shipping coordinators in Western Canada and getting to know each client manager by name. Everything came together in a single icy practice sentence. "It's just business, Colin, nothing private." I picked up the mail and carefully rose up, feeling the same tightness in my back. "Is there anything I need to sign right now?" Lucas smiled remorsefully. "Details will be sent to you by the HR team. Naturally, 2 weeks of severance." Naturally, the assistant ducked out of sight as I left, typing frantically at her keyboard. I pulled up next to my old vehicle in the parking lot and rested one palm on the worn paint. The yard was full of rigs that I had assisted in breaking into, drivers who I had assisted in training, and routes that I had assisted in optimizing using just my intuition and experience. With the envelope weighing heavily on my lap, I climbed into the driver's seat and gazed out the shattered window at the MapleHaul yard. I reflected on the missed holidays, the storms and the last-minute dashes that rescued client contracts. About the clients who relied on me to always deliver, and the inexperienced drivers I had coached. The console buzzed with my phone. I looked down. One of our oldest customers, Bill Thompson, texted us. "Heard what transpired next from Jerry at Northern Distributing. Say it ain't true, Colin." Then call me. Before I could even absorb the first two, a third ping arrived saying, "Let's talk." I became aware of something while I sat there. The people who mattered weren't prepared to let me go, even though MapleHaul may have let me go. Now what to 40 euros sutton? 3 messages were already waiting for me when I got to my truck. None of them were from the business, but rather from the people who were most important. With the envelope on the passenger side of my old Dodge still unopened, I reclined in the battered seat, Another message buzzed through and my fingers lingered over the phone. Once more, Bill Thompson. Tomorrow coffee, my treat. Shortly after Jerry said, call me first if you're thinking about moving, Maria from Lakeland Foods then sent a lengthy series of angry emojis, followed by the words, call me ASAP. I sat there for a while in the late afternoon sun, the brisk Alberta spring air seeping in through the broken window. My hands shook, not yet with fury, but with the weird void that arises when a phase of your life ends more quickly than you can process. I let out a breath and put my forehead on the steering wheel. I reminded myself that I was more than just a driver. When the roads iced over and the package still needed to get there, they called me. The man who knew which border crossings slowed down on long weekends, who maintained an extra set of snow chains in case of, and who remembered which port managers had grandchildren. And now I was, well, what? Once more the phone buzzed, Isabel. Through the speaker, my wife's voice came softly and worriedly. Colin, you're home so early, why? I shut my eyes. Izzy, they let me go. The other end paused. I could hear her sneakers shuffle over the kitchen floor and the clink of dishes in the background. Love, I'm very sorry. Are you all right? I paused, indeed, simply put numb. Her tone grew much softer. Go home, we will solve it. Perhaps it's actually a godsend. Blessing. At the time, I was unsure about how to interpret that word. I felt somewhat comforted by the familiar sight of our little home as soon as I turned into our driveway. The siding required painting. For weeks, the porch light had been flickering. However, Isabel and warmth were more significant inside. I saw another figure lounging carelessly against the porch railing as I stepped out of the truck. Leclerc Nathan. Nanonakirn. Since Nathan had left MapleHaul under Lucas's new leadership, I hadn't seen him in months. After more than 10 years of working together, he left because he was tired of the constant flow of corporate messages, the paperwork, and the budget cuts. Well, word gets around quickly, I managed a half smile as I called. Nathan's smile was familiar and effortless as he pushed off the railing. You understand the situation, friend? This kind of information spreads before the ink dries. Isabel kindly put down the coffee mugs we were sharing at my kitchen table before she left for her night shift at the hospital. Nathan watched me with the same contemplative look he used to have when we switched routes on lengthy hauls, leaning back with his boots crossed at the ankles. So he continued at last, what comes next? I laughed a little dryly. That is the most important question. Nathan bent over. Have you ever considered managing your own business? Completely unprepared, I blinked, like launch a business. He gave a nonchalant yet purposeful shrug. Colin, you have the clients. Hell, you're getting calls already. The reputation is yours. Additionally, I have a stack of notes from my exit from MapleHaul. Do you believe Lucas is the only person with logistics experience? The sheer insolence of it made me shake my head. It's insane, Nathan, correct? He smiled. Perhaps you know what's more bizarre, though. Allowing men like you to watch from the sidelines as Lucas and his Toronto crowd destroy this province. As I gazed into my coffee, my thoughts were racing. Is it possible for us to accomplish this? Begin from the beginning, construct something superior. From his jacket, Nathan took out a crumpled piece of paper that had a list of connection suppliers and leads. Colin, we could pull this off. We could accomplish this successfully. The day's burden weighed heavily on me, but behind the fatigue, a tiny, unyielding flame ignited. Have you ever considered managing your own business? With my heart racing, I glanced up at Nathan and knew I had my response already. Nathan, we're not merely establishing a business. We are constructing a lifeboat. Before I understood, I already had everything I needed. The thought of launching a business scared me. I was sitting at the kitchen table that evening with documents spread out in front of me after Isabel had left for her shift. My old logbooks, client contact list, maintenance logs. Across from me, Nathan was pounding away on his laptop, comparing permits and insurance needs. I had left my jacket hanging over a chair still reeking from the shop floor, so the kitchen had a slight fragrance of motor oil and coffee. Nathan looked up and reminded me that Gordon was expecting us at 9. McAllister Gordon only when his wife's illness treatment depleted their finances did. The man who had started MapleHaul decades earlier decided to sell it. When I was a new driver, Gordon had been my mentor and the one who taught me that a firm was only as good as its drivers. That night I hardly slept since my thoughts were constantly alternating between fear and possibilities. As we arrived at Gordon's peaceful suburban neighborhood in the morning, I was struck by the magnitude of the danger we were going to take. He was tending to his garden out back when we found him. His brow furrowed as he looked up, and then a gradual smile appeared on his face. Gordon wiped his hands on his slacks and muttered, "Well, well, to whom do I owe the enjoyment?" I lay it out as we sat on his porch, the worn wood beneath us being warmed by the late spring light. The layoffs. The customers are phoning Nathan, and I dared to believe in this concept. Gordon's eyes were keen behind heavy gray brows, and he listened without interjecting. He sat back and exhaled deeply after I was done. At last he remarked, "You guys are either brilliant or insane." "Probably both," said Nathan, grinning. Gordon leaned forward after giving a little laugh. "What amount do you require?" I went cold. "We're not here to solicit money, Gordon." "That's not true," he responded firmly. "Since the day I turned over the keys, I've been watching MapleHaul fail. You two are the first sensible people I've seen in this industry in a long time. I was also saving money for a boat. My spouse would have preferred that I use it for something worthwhile." The sudden pang of emotion made me swallow hard. My phone buzzed in my pocket as we shook hands. It was one of MapleHaul's most experienced dispatchers, Sarah Tremblay. I frowned inquisitively in response. "Do you have a moment?" Colin, with a tense voice, she whispered behind her. I could hear the sharp click of keyboards and the hum of the operations floor. "Sarah, always, what's happening?" She spoke quickly and urgently. "I recently came upon the internal memos. Lucas does more than merely cut drivers. In 6 months, the entire Edmonton business will be shut down. Everything is being moved to Calgary. None of the employees are aware yet." The remarks were like a kick to the stomach. "How certain are you?" My voice was quiet as I asked. "100%, she stated. I looked at the drafts of the lease termination. They have already begun touring southern warehouses." I sat motionless on Gordon's balcony as the call came to an end, the early sun suddenly seeming far away. Nathan scowled as he leaned closer. "What is it?" I told them everything. Gordon's hands gently folded in his lap as his face tensed. Nathan shook his head and whistled softly. Nathan whispered, "So this isn't just about us, it concerns everyone they are abandoning." We were silent for a long time. Then I found the words quietly. "Nathan, we're not merely establishing a business, we are constructing a lifeboat. We didn't have to take their customers. MapleHaul was shoving them in our direction." It was early in the morning when I watched the sun peek over the horizon from outside our small rented office on the outskirts of Edmonton's industrial zone. 2 rented trucks glittered in the dim light behind me, and our emblem, Fraser Leclerc Freight, was freshly painted on the door. Despite their lack of ostentation, they belonged to us. The crisp Alberta air filled my chest as I inhaled slowly, and for the first time in weeks I felt more excited than afraid. Sarah Tremblay was sitting at a makeshift desk covered in order forms, and Nathan was pacing the little office with a coffee mug in hand, reeling off delivery timetables to her, with his breath catching in the cold. Ryan Patel, the mechanic we had just brought over from MapleHaul, was outside examining one of the trucks. Despite being a skeleton team, we were prepared. In the quiet office, the phone rang sharply. Sarah took it up with a smile, pulling at her mouth, and called, "Good morning, Colin, line 1, Bill Thompson." With a pounding heart, I reached for the phone. "Bill, it's good to hear from you." "Colin," Bill said in a kind, recognizable voice. "Look, I have a shipment that must arrive in Calgary by tomorrow morning. This month, MapleHaul has been late twice. Do you think you can manage it?" A soft smile curved my mouth. "Definitely." The first genuine test was that Ryan spent the afternoon making sure the apparatus was perfectly tuned. Sarah mapped the route, and Nathan and I ran the numbers. The confirmation text from Bill arrived with a thumbs-up emoji and the single word, "Impressive," as our vehicle pulled into Calgary at first light. However, pressure came with success. More calls poured in over the next few days. Some urgent, some hesitant. Western Distributing requested an experiment. Maria from Lakeland Foods inquired about our ability to manage a partial order. Sarah, however, brought alarming news from the MapleHaul camp. In order to keep contracts, Lucas was cutting rates, forcing his drivers to work dangerous hours and ignoring maintenance warning signs. Nathan and I would debate how far we could stretch without cracking while we sat in the office late into the night in the evenings. Nathan tapped a spreadsheet and spoke confidently. "We hold our rates. We lose the only thing that makes us unique if we race to the bottom with Lucas." He was correct. My instinct told me that our true edge was trust, not cost. However, the tension was growing. I sat in the silent office one evening after the majority of the crew had left, looking out at the trucks parked under the yard lights. As always, Isabel called on her break in a quiet, grounded voice. "How are things going?" she inquired. I paused. "We're waiting, just." She hesitated. "Colin, you have my admiration no matter what." I didn't understand how much I needed to hear those words until then. The test arrived a few days later. Bill called once more, his voice solemn. "MapleHaul recently reduced their prices, Colin. To be honest, it's alluring. But I need to know if this is a short-term move or if you're in it for the long run." I took a deep breath. "You know me, Bill. For the past 15 years, I have been there for you. We are committed to making this work." After a lengthy silence, Bill's friendly laugh could be heard over the telephone. "I was hoping you would say that." The excitement rushed and then subsided as I hung up, leaving a sense of peace that I hadn't had in weeks. Nathan raised an eyebrow as he entered the office. "All right." I smiled wearily. "We're going to see if trust pays off." At morning, the phone buzzed, one text message that made all the difference. As the first gray light crept over the window, I was already up and sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee cooling in my hands. I jumped as I felt the counter vibrate. With my heart racing, I reached for the phone. Bill Thompson was the one. Despite its briefness, the sentence may have easily been a thunderclap. "Everyone is on board." I read the lines again and just stared at the screen for a while. We were in charge of the contract that might make or break us, the decision we had been waiting for. With a trembling breath, I let go of the strain in my shoulders. A few seconds after that, Nathan burst into the room with a madman's smile. And his hair sticking out in all directions, I saw the text. "Colin, we succeeded." Later that morning, we got together at Bill's office, a neat brick structure with a busy warehouse adjoining. Bill gave me a solid, rough and warm handshake. He motioned the contract across the table and said, "Colin, you deserve this. I'm not easily trusted. However, for 15 years, you have been delivering." I experienced a weird mixture of relief and incredulity as I signed. I had thought I was done when I left MapleHaul a few weeks prior. I was now seated across from one of Alberta's largest shippers, finalizing a deal that would change the course of our destinies. However, not everybody was having a party. My phone called once more as we were leaving Bill's office, and it was Lucas this time. "I've been hearing things, Colin," he said sharply. "You have been stealing clients by making calls." I spoke at a level tone. "Lucas, they called me." "You're treading carefully," he yelled. "When you joined MapleHaul, you signed a non-compete agreement?" Calmly and steadily, I inhaled. 5 years have passed since that expired. You may wish to review your documentation." After a little period of stillness, Lucas said in a chilly, low voice, "This is your one warning. Avoid using our accounts." Without answering, I hung up. Back at our office, Ryan was getting the trucks ready for the extended routes. Nathan was figuring out the logistics, and Sarah was on the phone organizing the new timetables. The place was alive with purpose and vitality. We couldn't overlook the tension that ran beneath it all, though. As I entered, Sarah said, "Lakeland Foods called starting next month. They want to transfer half of their freight to us." Nathan whistled quietly. "It's happening more quickly than we anticipated." I gave a nod. "All right, but let's avoid arrogance." My phone rang once again that night as I was going around the lot inspecting each truck individually. "Sarah here, Colin. You'll be shocked to learn that Western Distributing has joined. And Cornerstone Builders just dropped MapleHaul," she said hesitantly. My heart thumped. The biggest account for MapleHaul, a major player in Alberta construction logistics, was called Cornerstone. They had been untouchable for months. "To whom did they turn?" I inquired cautiously, half knowing the answer already. Sarah said, half laughing, half awed, "Not us, National Logistics was chosen." However, Lucas is losing it at work, yelling at the sales staff and accusing them all of treachery. I released a breath I had been holding without realizing it. We weren't the only ones who caused harm. Lucas's own careless actions were destroying his business from the inside out. The sound of the vehicles outside drifted through the window as Nathan and I sat silently in the office later that night, the paperwork spread out between us. Nathan tapped his pen against a contract and muttered, "We've come a long way. However, this is the pivotal moment." With a slight release of tightness in my shoulders, I leaned back. We are now in the major leagues. I lost my job 6 months ago. I got a family today. I stood in Fraser Leclerc Freight's yard, watching our fleet of trucks line up for departure in the chilly early morning air. Engines hummed faintly as the drivers performed last-minute checks on 15 rigs that had been readied and polished. In contrast to the small rental space we had begun in the new warehouse behind me, shone in the gentle Alberta sunlight. I inhaled deeply as the smell of morning frost and diesel filled my lungs. It was familiar. It was electricity inside. With her headphones on, Sarah called out updates while seated at the dispatch desk. As Ryan and his group went between the vehicles checking loads and adjusting straps, their laughter reverberated across the parking lot. With a silent smile, Nathan observed everything while leaning against the doorframe and holding a coffee mug. When I joined Nathan, he whispered, "Never thought we'd get here this fast." "Neither did I said, my voice full of subdued wonder. The previous few months had flown by. Bill Thompson, Lakeland Foods, and Western Distributing would all join. As soon as word got out, applications began to pour in: seasoned mechanics, dispatchers, and drivers who were fed up with MapleHaul's mayhem and ready to work for a company that appreciated them. What about MapleHaul? It was written on the wall. Last week, Sarah came in and placed a folded newspaper on my desk. Lucas Morin had been moved to a consulting position in Toronto, which was a tactful way of stating he had been brushed aside. The headline had said, "MapleHaul Logistics Files for Bankruptcy Amid Mass Client Exodus." The trucks were sold at auction, and the Edmonton yard was available for lease. In fact, we purchased 3 of them. The old MapleHaul emblem was barely apparent beneath our midnight blue and silver. When I brushed my touch over the freshly painted outside of one, every time I saw them pull out under our name, I couldn't help but feel a tiny sense of pride because Ryan had made sure they were road ready. Gordon stopped by that afternoon on his way to the workplace, knocking on the pavement with his cane. He continued to visit most mornings, sharing memories from the past while sipping coffee with the workers. He laughed quietly when he saw me. "Not bad for a couple of dream-driven troublemakers, huh?" I chuckled. "Without you, it would not have been possible." He gave me a shoulder squeeze. "Colin, you preserved the essence of this company. Most people can't say that much." Later, Isabel and I took a solo drive to the lake, with the horizon painted in shades of gentle pink and gold. The water extended calmly and smoothly beneath the lowering sun. Neither of us cared if the fishing lines even twitched as we sat on the old dock with our fishing poles in our laps. Happy Isabel leaned her head against my shoulder and asked in a low voice, I thought of the crew back at the yard, the families we'd helped, and the drivers we'd given another shot as I watched the light dance across the ocean. I considered the old MapleHaul thermos that was still on my desk as a memento of my origins, rather than a somber memory. With a smile tugging at the corner of my mouth, I answered quietly, yes, I am. Miles aren't always the focus of the long haul. It's about returning to what really counts. After years of devotion, there's a certain type of pain that comes from being rejected. When I was fired, I experienced a great deal of pain, not just the loss of a career, but also the feeling of invisibility and seeing everything I had worked so hard to build rejected as interchangeable. But what came next surprised me. The power of community, calm resolve, and the knowledge that I was never really alone. This is one of many stories, not just mine. People like you and I encounter injustice in many cities and industries, and we wonder if there is any hope for the future. Here's what I have to say. There is integrity and patience are important. What arrogance seeks to destroy can be restored by strategic, composed action. I appreciate you listening to me. If you were moved by this tale, please rate it with a 1 in the comments. If you have a journey of your own, please share it below and subscribe for more stories like this one. We may remind one another that we are more than the jobs we lose. We are the life we create in the future.